components are such an amazing primitive and abstraction that, it doesn't matter what you're building, you probably want to build it with React, right? Like I remember one of my kind of like popular tweets at the time was like, it seems to me that we haven't heard about the end of React, nor even the beginning of React yet, because there's so many more places where this component abstraction will make a lot of sense, right? And that kind of predated React VR existing, Inc., which is a project for using React from the command line. Like there's so many places that you can put it, because fundamentally it was a leapfrog in the programming model. Yeah. And that's what I think makes it so strong, because the component is just, how people think. I've also said, React is the Lego for adults. And like it is good to think of the world that way. We've seen the co-evolution of React with design systems. They've kind of gone hand in hand with the ability to like do the work once and then componentize it and then distribute it. When hooks first came out, I got really excited because I kind of, for me, that was the moment where I foresaw that, well, now we can componentize data and functionality in a way that we couldn't before, right? Like mixins had failed, copying and pasting onto a component class prototype doesn't quite do it. So how do you, get a hook for data fetching, or a hook that encapsulates a behavior like subscribing to a certain event? And that to me was like another really, really massive win for React. Like, another like Lego bricks for behavior. And the other day, even like, I found this interesting company that provides a gateway for blockchain, and they were distributing their API as React hooks. So like it was that kind of confirmation. Like, wow, like think about 10 years ago, you were presenting your new idea to the world, and your hello world could have been, curl, and here's the API. And that was certainly true for companies like Stripe. Now you're presenting some like cool like data binding or data solution or API layer and whatever, and the abstraction has been risen. So now you can talk about, here's my hook that does this thing. Like if Firebase came out today, it would be selling you on here's the hook, right? Versus try to data changes.
Right. And then I guess at that point, you could kind of connect to any API, and it looks almost exactly the same. I mean, you just get your data back, and you might have some broadcast events or another handler.
And what I like about hooks too is that they almost look like imperative data fetching code, like A equals get B, and then use it immediately. But that hook is reentrant. So actually, it's not even a one-off, function call. It's a function call that then gets re-executed in the future if the data changed. So now we're approaching the time where like React has actually completed a vision and implementation that live up to their name, right? Like now React truly is more reactive in a way, which is fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it's kind of evolved over time, because I remember like when it came out with mixins, everything was kind of just implied. So you'd add a mixin and you just get some sort of behavior, and you kind of guess as to where it came from.
Totally. And, like, what is this going to do? It merges this mixin, and what are the consequences of that?
And then it's almost taken like the complete opposite approach. Now it went from that to life cycles on a class. And then now it's like, screw life cycles. We're going to subscribe to some data, and we're just going to render out whenever it changes.
And there's a story of like React really like evolving so fast based on very interesting product requirements that Facebook had and a lot of other people from the community had, that it almost feels like React is moving faster than the language can keep up, right? Like if you think about hooks, well, hooks are doing exactly what's necessary for that abstraction, and yet the language in some ways fights against it, and there's like now rules of hooks. So React in its own has always been so product centric and so like let's create cool things centric, that first of all, JSX was not part of the language.
Mm-hmm.
It got added in. Now hooks, well, they're just function calls.
Yeah.
But they bend the language in this way or another way. Suspense is the same. Like, it throws promises. Who does that, right? And all these things come from like, well, it turns out that people don't like to see pages flickering in 20 different ways and see 100 of spinners. And in fact, by the way, the spinners also take up resources, and so do the skeletons. Like, why not coalesce all this, async IO? And then they were like, okay, well, like, how do we do this? Oh, like, you a second on the front row. Oh, raise your hand. Oh, throw a promise. Okay, let's do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's more like it's a very interesting product focused idea and ideation. And I've always been a really big fan of that. And honestly, I think that's what keeps React so interesting and relevant to people.
Yeah.
And as well as Next.js, like today we're wrapping up a release, and I'm gonna share it because like I think by this time the podcast will be out, which we're incorporating React Refresh. And to my knowledge, this is the first framework that outside of Facebook, because Facebook has it internally, it's React's ability to do hot module replacement in basically real time as you edit your code. But also it retains a state. So you can use it to, refresh code while working on complex flows, multi-stage forms, all kinds of client-side state, navigation, animation. And one of the things, like, this is an invention that is now possible after React aligned all these ducks of, hooks, and how do we manage the state, and how do we manage components. Now this becomes possible, making the developer experience so good that your edits feel like they're reflecting in real time. So in some ways, this is what keeps React so relevant, is that it's been a few years now, and still we're working on just cutting edge capabilities, both